I'm going to overcome this tonight. Eventually it will happen, and sometimes we get strength from things that happen in our dreams. But then I was, turning a little bit thinking about children is as parents, we have a responsibility to help our children cope with this. They have had a very interesting new normal, doing online schooling, not having birthday parties and play dates, and our children are picking up things around our feelings and our thoughts about the virus. And I just want to encourage parents to, one, be mindful of how much news we're watching or how much information we're exposing the children to, because depending on their age, we don't know how they're making sense of that or how they understand. Like some children are afraid for the parents to leave the house. Like, I don't want you to die, because it's on the news all day, every day. That fear lives in them. But if we can first calm our own fears and our own anxieties, and then have conversations with our children, even ask them, what do you know about this? I did it with my son the other day. He's like, coronavirus is bad. And the president comes on every day and talks about it. Okay, he's 7 years old and that's his understanding of it. But then I asked him well, are you ready to go back to school? Do you have any fears around that? What do you think about it? I think we need to talk to our children and just kind of see where they are. And your 7-year-old is going to need something very different than your 15-year-old. But let's start the conversation and not always wait for them to come to us, that we can start the conversation now.
And it's really healthy to begin the conversation now, long before it happens, so that it's a conversation that you've been having before the kids actually resume school. It gives them time to process it.
Yes. And I see we have another question.
Yes, this one is actually right in line with our conversation, and it says, my children keep getting invited to birthday parties and events with small crowds, but I'm just not sure I'm comfortable with it. How can I address this with parents and my kids?
That's a really good question. And there are no simple and no easy answers to it. And again, what may work for one parent is not going to be necessarily what works for another parent or another child. So I think the first thing you can do is talk with a parent and find out more information. It's always best to get more information before making a decision. Find out where the birthday party will be. It's one thing if it's in a small house, it's another thing if it's in a big field and there's plenty of social distancing. So get more information before you make a decision. And then trust yourself. If you feel that this isn't right for your child, you're the person who makes that decision. And if you feel it is right for your child, you're the person who makes that decision. There aren't clear rights and wrongs in it, but it's really important that as the parent, you make the decision and you don't leave the decision up to the child.
Absolutely. And I was also thinking there's workarounds you can do. Like maybe if you're uncomfortable going to the birthday party, because maybe it will be in a pavilion, maybe you can set up a play date with that child later. Or if you're teenagers, maybe you two can get together later. But right now, I'm not comfortable. And also that, like I said, we don't want to judge that parent who decided to have the birthday party, because there could be stuff we don't know why they made that decision. But I agree wholeheartedly, as a parent, you have to trust your instinct and you have to trust your gut, and you also, know your child and what may have consequences later. So trust your gut, and there will be workarounds. I'm hopeful that the children will go back to school in the fall. I'm very hopeful that they'll go back to school in the fall. It will look different, but there are a lot of things that we just don't know. There are a lot of unknowns right now, and as people, we really want answers, clear, direct, concise answers, and they're just not there to be given, and that's very hard for people to manage.
Right, and there are so many concerns that you may have with this, whether it's your child going to a party or whether it's you going to the grocery store. The concerns may be around what you're going to encounter getting the virus, but they also may be around, what am I going to do if somebody coughs around me and they don't have a mask on? Or what am I going to do if somebody sneezes in my face? And how am I going to respond? So there's often a lot of anxiety too about what I'm going to face when I go out, or what my child is going to face, or what if somebody sneezes on them, or they forget social distancing and they get too close to one another. We don't have all of the answers. But I think as we think about how we are going to respond, it's good to think about it in advance, because then we have some choice and we can decide how we want to respond. And we can be more intentional in our response rather than being reactive in our response.
Absolutely.
And it's going to trigger other feelings, and being prepared for those as well. For example, I was in the store the other day, and there was a couple walking towards me, and there was plenty of room, and I sort of tried to pull to the side and to get social distancing. They did not have masks on, and they walked as close to me as possible. And it was a very eerie feeling, and it was a feeling that pre-coronavirus wouldn't have bothered me in the slightest bit. I probably wouldn't have even noticed it. But in this time I did notice it, and I felt my space was being invaded a little bit. And so being aware that we're going to get triggered, and the anxiety is going to come out one way or another, and we still are responsible for how we choose to handle our anxiety and fear. The anxiety and fear are normal, okay? But the anxiety and fear are different than the behaviors that we may engage in when we feel anxious or afraid.
Absolutely. And I think you made the perfect point. We want to respond, not react. And if we think about it ahead of time, if we think about it in advance, we're more likely to have an appropriate reaction, or, respond appropriately. Because some things, one thing happened to me the other day, what was interesting, I had a sneeze and I had my mask on in the grocery store. And I was like, for a minute, I was like, what do? I don't want to sneeze in my mask and have that on me. But then I was like, well, I won't sneeze on everybody else in the world. So I kept my mask on and I sneezed in my mask. But the minute I got in my car, I was like, I got to take that off. Some things you just don't know what to expect, like what's going to happen.
Right.
And I have had in the grocery store, like, hey, could you give like at least 3 feet? Maybe we can't do 6. And we don't, but like I said, give other people grace. We don't know what's going on with those people, why they've chosen, why they want to be so close to us. You're just so magnetic, Carol. They just wanted to be close to you. But if we think ahead of time about how we want to respond, it will be better for all of us. And I think we have a question from the audience.
Yes, we do. It says, my job is ready for us to come back to work next week, but I worry that one of us will get sick and spread to others. How can I move forward and let go of my fear of going back to work?
One of the things I think in that case, information is very powerful. So what precautions has your place of employment put in place?
And what precautions can you put in place? You can wear a mask, which will keep you from spreading it. And if there can be kind of an agreement either by your employer that this is what you will do, or by the college you work with saying, let's do this because this is something we can do for each other, then it will feel safer to you. So anything you can do to help yourself feel safer and to feel more comfortable is the right thing to do.
Because in a lot of ways, it's taking power back. I think we're so focused sometimes on, well, what are they going to do? Or is it safe for me? But you really control your safety the most. So I had that conversation with one of my staff who was concerned about going into work. And I was like, what would make you feel safe? Mm-hmm. Think about it. Because then we have a plan of action and something we can do. Do you want to be this far away in an office? Are you in a cubicle? Can people sit further apart? Someone even mentioned like opening a window so fresh air is coming in. There's different things that can be done, but you have to know what works for you might be very different than what works for me.
And I think we also need to prepare ourselves psychologically. And a part of that is getting in the mindset, I can handle this, so that we calm ourselves down and we begin to relax and we know, I don't know exactly what's going to happen. Is it possible somebody could get sick? It's possible. Is it likely? Probably not, hopefully not. But I will handle whatever comes my way, because hard things happen, and we need to be psychologically prepared that we can handle it. And that's a way of hanging on to some confidence and giving yourself, again, as you were saying, Melissa, power, empowering yourself to live the most productive lives you can in the world in which we live.
And to your point, I was, remembering that you've gone through stuff before in life. I mean, unless you're a baby and a week old and you're not watching us right now, you've gone through stuff. You've overcome things in life. And you can use what you learned in those lessons, and especially the times you surprised yourself with your strength, to get through this. We're in a collective unknown, and not just in America, in the world, we're in a collective unknown. But I know I've gone through things before in my life, and I've overcome them that were hard and scary, and I use that to be like, whatever comes my way, I'll get through that as well. And I think sometimes people forget their own strength, their own power, when the fear overtakes.
Yeah, and remembering in the midst of this that we're not alone, that everybody is facing these fears. And there's power in community and power in knowing this isn't just about me, this is about all of us. And if we can connect with each other and engage in supporting one another and expressing love and compassion from one another, that will help banish the fear.
And something you had mentioned before when we talked is that also rely on your support system, your support network. None of us are an island. So whether it's your family, your friends, if you're part of a faith-based community, your faith, belief in a higher power, use that. Use all of the resources that you have available to you to help give you strength and remind you of your own resilience. I think we have another question.
Yes, speaking of resilience, this one says, resilience is hard in the wake of all of this. How can we press forward even if this may come back later in the fall?
What option do we have? In many ways, we need to press forward because we're not going to be able to go backward. It will never be exactly as it was before the virus hit. I remember the days after 9/11 when we were all shocked with all of the violence and the death that occurred. And it changed this nation, and it changed us, and it changed our habits, and it changed airport security. And what was normal pre-9/11 wasn't normal post-9/11. And I think we're going to experience much of the same here. What was normal pre-coronavirus is not going to be the normal post-coronavirus. And we will be accommodating to it, and we will get used to it. I don't think we will be wearing face masks for the rest of our lives. But until we have a vaccine and until this is under control, it's a way that we protect ourselves, and it's a way that we move forward together. I think resiliency and moving forward, to pick up on what you said earlier, Melissa, as well, can be empowered if we're a part of a faith community anywhere, to be able to turn to Yahweh or God or Allah or our higher power and draw strength from that. Draw strength from the fact that we are connected to this earth and to the world, and we're inextricably connected to one another. And the more we can begin to live into that and draw on the strength that can come from that, the more we're going to be able to face a very uncertain future.
Because life really is a lot of uncertainty. You know, there's a lot, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, with whether coronavirus is in the picture or not. And we get up every day, we do what we need, we use our resources, we use our support system, and we get through it. And I think sometimes we forget, like I keep saying, I think this fear, sometimes you forget who you are. And it's remembering who you are and what you've overcome, because some of this new coronavirus world, I was thinking, you always should have washed your hands for 20 seconds.
Right.
Like some things were what we should have been doing, and this was just a reminder of good practice. And sometimes for you, remember things you've gone through in the past and use that as your own strength and your own good practice moving forward.
And I believe we have another question.
Yes, one is a comment, and it's from Instagram, and it says, good words, draw from previous strength, and remember we can do hard things. And a follow-up question from someone else says, what tips do you have for teachers whose students are coming to them virtually with concerns about going back to school in the fall with so many people in the building?
Tips for teachers. Well, that's your principal's problem. No, I'm just playing. But students will have, there are fears. And they can do, like most of us adults who work with other people, make sure they feel heard. Hear the concern. Hear the complaint. And if you've noticed common concerns, keep track of them. Because maybe when the administrators and people who are the decision makers come together, they need to know what the concerns and fears are. Maybe there could be like a town hall style event. Like, for example, my son's classroom, they don't get together often, but they have these occasional meets, Zoom meet calls. She can ask, like, what are you looking forward to? And she has asked, what are you looking forward to? But what are you concerned about? And I would say for teachers, this is just a mental health professional in me talking, that I do anticipate increased anxiety and fear in everyone when school gets back. I anticipate it for teachers, for parents, for students, for the school bus driver, everyone, because there's so much we just don't know. But I also have trust and faith in, I send my child off to school every day, they're going to do everything in their power to keep my child safe. And they're going to put the necessary precautions in place to keep my child safe. And sometimes just feeling heard and saying, I will do everything I can to keep you safe, that's all we can do.
Right, I think that is. I also think it can be really helpful to be able to be calm yourself with the children and to be confident yourself that we will be keeping the classroom clean, that we will work together to make this a safe place, because then you're empowering the students to also have a role in keeping a clean and safe environment. But as adults, whether we are dealing with students, whether it's teachers, parents, the more confident we can become and the calmer we can be, the students will pick that up on.
And even if it's fake confidence.
Right, exactly. Even if it's fake. It's our anxiety will do nothing but fuel the anxiety of the students and the children. And even in unconscious ways, they pick up on it. And I think we have another question.
Yes, this one is talking about something we touched on a little bit earlier. It says, my anxiety is high as I see people at the store not wearing masks, getting too close to me, and I just want to yell at them. How can I let someone know nicely that they are too close?
Well, I'm curious, like in your life, if someone crosses a boundary, how would you otherwise let them know that someone crossed the line for you? Sometimes, as you can tell, I use humor. I could be like, oh, if you don't believe in social distancing, hey, like, but you can make it playful. Mm-hmm. You can just move out of the way. I don't recommend a more aggressive. I think you can be assertive without being aggressive. I think aggression will just lead to further aggression and then a big blow up that no one wants. I think some people may not even realize, because sometimes it's like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize I was standing that close to you, I was in my own head. You can say things to people in a respectful way, and I think most of the time you will get a decent response, and sometimes you may not, but that's where, if you think ahead of time what you're going to do and how you'll respond, you'll be able to manage that.
And I think, again, this is an important place to separate the feelings from the behavior, because the feelings, that's a natural feeling, the anger and the frustration, but what you want to do with it becomes a conscious choice. And talking to someone about it is one choice and can be a good choice, so can just stepping back yourself and deciding, I'm just going to create the distance that I want. I think it may also be helpful perhaps to think a little bit about some of the psychology underneath wearing a mask, because some people don't wear a mask because they're just simply rebelling, okay? But some people don't wear a mask because it feels to them like if I wear a mask, it's saying I'm weak. And I'm not going to be weak, because then they feel vulnerable. And then at an unconscious level, they may be afraid they're going to get the virus. Now, paradoxically, we wear a mask to keep from spreading the virus, but people don't want to appear to be a scaredy cat, okay, which is what they may feel in wearing a mask. So sometimes it's a person's own fear that keeps them from wearing a mask. So if we can have compassion and understanding for that person, rather than just being angry and judgmental, that will make us feel better on the inside at least.
Absolutely. And I think we have another question.
Yes, this is going to be our final question, and it's just around how can people know if their anxiety is something they should talk to a professional about, or if it's something they can handle at home?
Well, my first thought is, how much is it disrupting your life? Like, is it impacting your eating, your sleeping? Are you noticing I'm more fearful than I used to be? And maybe even have other people in your life may comment about, I've noticed this change in you. Because if something is negatively impacting your life, especially in multiple areas, then I do recommend talking to a mental health professional, whether that is, and in these days, a lot of things are, just about everything is virtually online telehealth. So whether it's an organization like CHRIS 180 or any other mental health professional, and even if you're not sure, there's no harm in talking to someone.
Right.
There's no harm at all of just, let me check, is this normal? Am I okay?
Exactly. And if you feel that it's impacting your life or your relationships, reach out for help, because you don't have to do it alone, and you don't have to figure out the answer by yourself. You can get a professional to help you. And I know we at CHRIS 180 would be more than happy to help you assess that, to help you get some additional tools that might help you cope more effectively, and to hopefully live more of your life that can be happy and enjoying the moment rather than being fearful and scared.
Well, this is a great end to the conversation. Thank you so much, Carol and Melissa, for being here today, for joining us, and for having such great insight. I think one thing I will take away is that we can do really hard things. We can get through this, and we